Welcome to the Tree.Church Bible Study, where through conversation, we are taking an in-depth look at the book of Ruth. I am your host, Stacey, and I have Phil and Chris joining me today. All right, as we kick off today's episode, I'd love to hear, what's your favorite family tradition? Phil, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, for me, it sounds silly because I know a lot of people do it, but just Christmas PJs. We get Christmas PJs every year, and it's just a fun thing. And as now the kids are adults, and so they show up in their PJs, and we all match. And I know they don't probably love that, but they secretly do. So it's just that fun thing.
I love that.
That's fun.
Yeah.
I think for us, Christmas is the same. It's the same for me. For us, dang, I can't talk today, so it's going to be great. Christmas is the same time for me, like where there's just a lot of family traditions that revolve around Christmas time. So, I don't have anything specific for my immediate family now. It's like getting up, we read. The kids get us up early, so like that started when we were kids. We would wake my parents up, really early on Christmas morning because typically we had like multiple Christmases that we had to go and do. But somehow my kids picked that up where we don't go do multiple Christmases. So now we just get up early for no reason whatsoever. But it's just fun. The kids will, even as teenagers, they will come up, wake us up. Abigail got in the tradition of making me coffee for breakfast.
Love that.
And gets the coffee ready. And then we read the Christmas story. And so
that's so cool.
Just love that. I don't know why I had such a hard time communicating that. Like that's indication of what today's going to be like. Here we go.
I can feel it.
I'm with you guys on a lot of Christmas traditions, but actually something that I started when my daughter went to school is the first and the last day of school every year, her and I go and get ice cream to celebrate.
Oh, nice.
To celebrate that survived the first day of school and then to celebrate that we survived a whole other school year. And it felt a little bit more special this year because we survived our first year of middle school.
Nice. So what did you get this year?
What
flavors?
I got a salted caramel. And she got Cookie Monster.
Nice.
Because that's like her favorite.
Nice. Did you get the same flavor at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year?
You know what? We went to a different place. So I think we went to Dairy Queen on the first day of school.
Okay.
And we went to a place in Logan called Shorties, which has incredible ice cream if anybody's down in
right
the
there in
Hocking
downtown?
Hills. Yeah, where the washboard.
Yeah, that place is amazing.
I've never heard of that. I'll have to check that out.
You will.
It's great.
You'd love it. It's really good.
Shout out to Shorties.
Yeah. Hey,
shout out to
we've done a couple shout outs in this podcast this year. So speaking of shout outs, I just want to do real quick. Like I just got this gift from Edie Lehman, and it's probably one of the coolest things ever. Cool. It just says Bible Nerd, and I love it. So we're doing the Bible study podcast, and she got me a coffee cup that says Bible Nerd, and I love it. So shout out to Edie, and thanks so much for the gift. It's awesome.
I can't think of a better coffee cup for you,
no.
Chris. That's perfect.
It's true. Phil wanted to change it just to nerd.
I really did.
I told him it wasn't his coffee cup.
I love Chris's nerdy side. One of my favorite things about it.
Oh, goodness. Well, let's get this Bible study under control here. And we are continuing in our study of Ruth. And in our last episode, I'm going to encourage those, if you haven't listened to all of the previous episodes, we're really coming to the close of this beautiful story of Ruth and Boaz and Naomi. But the last time Boaz had a conversation, there was another person who could have been the kinsman redeemer. But Boaz had a conversation with him and he chose not to. So Boaz gets to be the family redeemer. And we really talked about God being our redeemer and what that looks like for our lives. And today we're going to see where Boaz, he's going to make the deal official. So there's some things that have to happen for it to be solidified. So he's going to make that happen as we see throughout our reading today. And we're going to look at some context and some other incredible things just about God's blessings in our lives. So we are going to be in Ruth 4, beginning in verse 7. Now, in those days, it was the custom in Israel for anyone transferring a right of purchase to remove his sandal and hand it to the other party. This publicly validated the transaction. So the other family redeemer drew off his sandal as he said to Boaz, "You buy the land." And so I want to stop there. I have to be honest. There have been so many times in this study where I've been like, That is so odd to me.
Well, speaking of weird traditions,
I know.
Yeah.
here's my. I'm just going to give you a sandal. And
Yeah.
It's weird because, well, for one, like it's a weird custom. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think, and in the commentaries that I read, like everybody was like, it's weird that the author brought this up because that's not the tradition, and it like there's no other like attestations of this happening, like for a legal thing, and so it's like, why did they go to this aside? What was the point of this? What was the purpose of saying this? The only thing that they could come up with was almost the idea of like, it was almost like it ties back to that passage in Deuteronomy, where it regards like the Levitite law, where that was kind of like in there. And so like, it's weird. So, but even there, it's like that was a thing of shame. So like in Deuteronomy, it's, you would take your sandal, if they would not fulfill their duty, you would take your sandal off, spit in their face and smack them with the sandal.
Yeah.
And so like,
so
that's
instead
not
he just
this.
hands them the sandal.
Well, yeah. And then there's even confusion. Like, if you look at it, they can't really tell who took whose sandal off. Did the guy take his own sandal off and give it to Boaz?
I have so many questions.
Did the guy take
Do you get to keep it? Is it just yours?
Yeah.
Does the other guy limp home? I mean, what?
Yeah, well, that's one of the main questions.
What happens after that?
Did the guy take Boaz's sandal off and hand it to him? Like what the heck happened here? So, but I think it drives the point home. So.
Yeah, exactly. I had to stop there
official.
because I was like, this is strange. This is so strange.
It publicly validates that. You like how it's worded.
So there you go. I said he seals the deal, and it was with the sandals. But Chris, you alluded to something, and I think it's important to help our listeners understand it a little bit more, because this has been one of our hearts behind the study of this book, is that we really wanted people to understand historical context, even some of the Israelite traditions and things. And when I was reading, you alluded to it, is that they almost didn't want this individual to feel shame. Oftentimes, if you were to be the kinsman redeemer, the family redeemer, they if you didn't take that, you were then shamed. But we see in this moment, as far as what we can see, Ruth wasn't present. Naomi's not present. Maybe they were, but that was all the commentaries I read and everything. It was like, it was just these individuals who had been a part of this conversation. And to me, I was like, that was almost another reason for their character, is that they were like, we don't want to put you to shame in this moment. And so the whole transition, all of that was, I think, honestly, to honor this individual.
Well, yeah. And I think you get a sense of like all of these customs were not necessarily like, we think of law in that like you have to fulfill these 5 steps or it's not a legal thing. It's more important that these representation. So like the whole taking off of the sandal is more likely just a representation of the deal's done. Like, you know what I mean? And so like, it's this representation. It's not done exactly the same way it was in these, where it shows up in other places in scripture. And again, the only like real like place where we see this like really even talked about is in the Deuteronomy passage. But the whole point being that Boaz is going through the right processes and procedures to go about doing this, this transaction. And that sounds weird that he's getting married through a transaction, but it was during this time period. That's what it was. And he, you're right. Like he doesn't want to, a lot of the commentators talked about like not wanting this to be a shameful remembrance for the person. Like the commentary I read talks about how Boaz doesn't even name the guy. The translation in the Hebrew is really like Mr. So-and-so. So it's like a very vague like name. They don't want the guy to be remembered, for one, because the story is not about the guy's failure necessarily. It's more so about Boaz's desire and Boaz's heart to be the family redeemer.
Right.
And so like, it's almost that he's an aside and Boaz goes through this process to handle it in the correct way. That said, we can look at it and go, see different characteristics. And I think we've talked about this in a couple past podcasts, but we can see the contrast between the guy's focus, where it was about him, it was about his descendants, it was about his inheritance and how this transaction would affect that. But then also the length that Boaz goes through to to go through with this, to acquire this, and the sacrifice that Boaz makes. And so we are meant to contrast that without this being a lasting, like, this guy just totally messed up and dropped the ball in this.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add before we continue on?
He pretty much did it all right there, didn't he?
Well, and it shows the loose tie to the Levitite law. Like, and so we talked about that a little bit too, just reminding this is not a 1-for-1. Like, the Levitite law was not necessarily, because Boaz is not the brother of Elimelech, and they are not in his household. So the fact that Boaz attaches this portion, Ruth and Naomi, to this portion, is really important, because it's even that the focus shouldn't have been Ruth. It should have been Naomi. And that guy, the guy might even had that in mind, that he wouldn't have affected his inheritance because Naomi was beyond childbearing years. So if the thought was he'd get the land and have to marry Naomi, there's no threat to his inheritance. You know what I mean? So, there's a lot of loose ties that show up here for the purposes of really just focusing on Boaz's character, his approach, his upstandingness in society, and him coming through to fulfill the thing that he told Ruth and Naomi that he would do. So,
absolutely. Well, let's continue on, picking up in verse 9. Then Boaz said to the elders and to the crowd standing around, "You are witnesses that today I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Chilion, and Mahlon. And with the land I have acquired Ruth, the Moabite widow of Mahlon, to be my wife. This way she can have a son to carry on the family name of her dead husband and to inherit the family property here in his hometown. You are all witnesses today." Then the elders and all the people standing in the gate replied, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make this woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, from whom all the nation of Israel descended. May you prosper in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. And may the Lord give you descendants by this young woman who will be like those of our ancestors Perez, the son of Tamar and Judah." So the elders said it. It's a done deal, right? I have to be honest, though, something that stuck out to me, it's just funny to me. I understand the context, and we're going to talk about this in a second. But the fact that they're like, may she have a son to carry on. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, we don't get to decide that. God gets to decide that, which we'll see in next episode, how this all unfolds. But it's just funny to me that was... for them, that was who carried on their line. As we've seen this all throughout this story, that was why Naomi and Ruth were in such a desolate place, a terrible place, is because they didn't have anybody to continue on that family line.
Exactly. But what's cool and what's unique about the text and the way that the author kind of does this, he's using a literary technique, because we see prayers for people in other spaces. So we go back, and I think I think it was Boaz with his workers, or maybe it was the workers who prayed for God's blessing on Boaz and God's blessing on Ruth. So you get this prayer, and then you get a response later on. And like you said, we'll see the response to this in next week's passage. But again, we have another prayer here where the author is almost foreshadowing what God's faithfulness in the moment. So like these people will pray for this blessing to happen, and then we'll see that God brings it to fruition in their lives. So
yeah. So I want to talk through, though, because some people listening might not even know who some of these individuals are.
Sure.
So they're talking about Rachel and Leah. Phil, would you like to give us maybe a little bit of background of who Rachel and Leah are, if you're prepared to do that? I know you know this story.
I do. But I'm not ready.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
Totally, my brain.
Chris, will you help us? No, that's okay.
I'm having migraine week this week,
It's
so I'm
fine.
just like have brain fog. So
No, that's fine.
I've got notes, but I don't have it enough that I want to.
That's fine.
I
Chris,
want you to do it, Chris.
You start, Chris, and then we'll add to this conversation.
So Rachel and Leah are they're actually sisters. So they are sisters of born to the man Laban, who was cousin to Isaac. If we remember back to the patriarchs, Abraham has Isaac. Isaac has Jacob and Esau. And so Rachel and Leah are Jacob's wives that he works for his uncle Laban to acquire. So again, just the historical context, that's how marriages were arranged. That's how things it took place. So I know that's strange to our ears that this is a transactional thing, but this was the context. So Rachel and Leah are Jacob's wives. They are the mothers of the 12 tribes of Israel, essentially. So, and so we get this sense here that maybe I'm jumping ahead. I don't want to jump ahead too far, but to just give context, Rachel and Leah are they are the matrons of Israel, and so like without them, there is no Israel, and there's a lot being tied together here by bringing them into this story. So
do you have anything to add now, Phil?
I don't.
No, that's okay. Well, we're gonna get into some deeper questions to help us. We're
gonna let Chris do that stuff.
No, I usually do too. I add my 2 cents every now and again.
No.
But I mean, really, essentially, what they're hoping is that all of this will come to present what they had hoped for, and we've seen all throughout this story, little bits and pieces of God, his plan just coming together and unfolding. And we get to see the end of it next week. But what I want to talk about before we kind of close today, the last part of this that I really want to focus on is God's blessing of obedience. When I look at this story, I see 2 individuals who followed God, had high character, high integrity, and that God really is blessing every step of obedience. We've talked about Ruth so many times, and what I love is that she left what she knew to follow a God she did not know. But we see her really living out godly character. And then we see Boaz, who continually is a man of character, continually is a man of integrity. We know he loves and serves God. Yeah. So I want to talk about this idea of obedience and how God blesses it. And I know we talk a lot about this here at the Tree. Like I know Pastor Matthew says it consistently, like God blesses our obedience. But sometimes I think we can have the wrong thought process with it because I think we automatically just assume I'm getting what I want or what I think I should get. So first I want to ask, what are some ways you personally have seen God bless steps of obedience in your life?
Go for it.
You got it, Phil.
I think when I think about this story too, like, and you even said this, Stacey, like this wasn't comfortable for her. It wasn't an easy decision. It was a place where she wasn't known, all those things. And I think that just resonates so much with us, with our lives. And so it's easy to obey when it's easy. It's easy to obey when things are going your way and it's something that you do anyway, or something that you fully are on board with, or you agree with the people in the situation that you're being obedient to. So I think when you do something that's out of your comfort zone, so like for me, I immediately think about even just with tithing, when we first started tithing, years and years ago, it was such an uncomfortable thing. And at that point in my life, I would have said, I'm really being obedient to God. Like I'm doing the right things. I felt like I was on fire for Jesus at the time. Like it's just things were adding up, and I felt like I was on a really good path. And then this just kept coming up, and I was one of those people where that's between me and God. That's between me and God, and that was my way of saying I'm not ready to do this, and I'm scared. It was between me and God. And God knew I was scared, and I wasn't going to do it. Right? So just being able to take that step of obedience and then go, just watch God bless it, because it was not an easy step for us. It didn't make sense on paper for us. It was one of those things where we had to go, this has to be a God thing. It was that same thing as Ruth. I'm going into this area that's just I know nothing about. I'm not comfortable. It looks like it could be a disaster. I don't feel like, it's just everything's going to drop out from underneath me. And so I've seen now so many times in my life, and so many times in other people's lives as we pastor people, just taking those steps of obedience and seeing that God is just faithful over and over and over. Not an easy thing to decide to do, but God is so faithful, and that's the fun. That's the fun part of serving Jesus and watching what he does, and then being able to go back and go, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I would say in a lot of ways, it falls along the same lines. Tithing is always one of my stories. Now I've always tithed, but I've always seen the blessing play out most practically through that situation. But honestly, even having conversations to move to biblical ed, I worked here for 11 years before I did that, and I was the tech director, and I was just in a season where like I was growing. I don't know how to say this. Like I was growing more. I'd come to the realization, I want to make it sound like, because I've absolutely 100% felt called here.
Right.
I loved being here.
Right.
I was growing more discontent with doing tech things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like God was stirring my heart to have a conversation about doing something different, or at least expressing like, hey, I have to say like this, that God's stirring something in my heart, and I'm going to have to make a change of some way.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have this position when I was going to have that conversation. And so it was a scary step of faith. And so like to go to Matthew and say, hey man, I don't want to do tech ministry my entire life. And say, I don't know what that looks like.
Knowing your personality, like I know you, that
Oh,
was
yeah.
not a comfortable, that was
No,
not
it's
like,
not
this is an easy decision.
No. And so like, and I felt God challenged me to have the conversation, because I'm more like I'm gonna sit back and let God like open up this door and do that. But I felt like God was like, no, go have the conversation. And so I was like, okay. So I went and I said, hey, I want to go back to school. I'm going to start pursuing these things. This is what I want to do. And so I don't want to do tech ministry the rest of my life. I love it here. I don't know if there's space for me to move. I don't know what you know what I mean? And so like, but I'm just giving this to you and letting you know, this is what I feel like God's stirring in my life and my heart. And so I had to leave it at that. Now, luckily, like God had already been stirring his heart and it was like, hey, I think we want to move you. We recognize this in you. We want to move you over to discipleship. We've got to figure out like what this looks like and how we can cover the tech ministry. But that's what we see that too in you, and we want to move you over to that. But so that was God blessing that step of obedience. It was scary. I mean, it was hard. And so like I think my entire life has been seeing God move in this way. Like when I'm willing to step into the thing that God's doing, man, it's all I know is that he takes care of me. Now, does that mean that it's easy every time I do it?
No.
And I still struggle. I still have to fight with it at times.
Right.
So
exactly.
And I think that's the important thing to remind people. Like you can be deep into your faith and love Jesus with all your heart and be following him really well. And there are still times when you go, oh, this is the hard one for me.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that God allows that for our dependence on him.
Oh,
you know?
Absolutely.
Because if we get to totally where we just can make every decision easy, we won't. We forget to go to him. And so it is that whole dependence thing, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. No.
I was going to say I'll share mine after you share a little bit more, but I think about that and like almost every single step of obedience that God has called me to take, I've taken from a place of fear. I've taken from a place of being scared. And it's because I'm like, I don't know what's on the other side of this.
Yeah.
But he does bless that. And it does show that dependence on him of like, okay, God, you're throwing me into this. Like I'm gonna go. I don't know how this is gonna turn out, but I know that you promised that you're gonna walk with me and that there's gonna be a blessing on the other side of this.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like one of the things when you first introduced this idea of blessing and this kind of this topic that shows up in the story of Ruth and Naomi, I was thinking about the idea of blessing. I was thinking about this morning when I was running, and I was kind of getting ready for the podcast, and I want to really flip the idea of blessing on its head and the role that obedience plays in blessing, because the story of Ruth and Boaz, though they are faithful, though they do exhibit character and integrity, the story is more about God's faithfulness.
Yeah.
And God's character than it is about their blessing. I get, for lack of better terms, their obedience in that. And what I'm getting at is this: is like if we flip and think about blessing in a different way, God's posture is always one of redemption, one of abundance, one of blessing, one of caring for His people. That's always God's posture.
Mm-hmm.
What we work with is whether or not we're going to step into and align ourselves with what God's doing to experience the blessing. So if we think about blessing as I'm going to deposit my obedience, I'm going to do something right, and God's going to give me something in return. I don't think we'll ever fully understand the ways in which God blesses us and the way in which God is working in our lives, and even the fullness of the story that's going on here, because that just becomes this transactional thing. But it's not a transactional. God is always this blessing. That's His posture. It's His heart. It's who He is.
Yeah.
The response that we have when we align ourselves like Ruth and Boaz do, we are in a place where we can experience that blessing and have it in our lives. And what it made me, why that transition is so important, and why to think about it in a different way. Think about it like a waterfall. If the water's always falling, we don't really experience, we don't get wet from it unless we step into the waterfall. You know what I mean? And so that's what we're doing when we're being obedient. We're stepping into God's blessing. You know what I mean? And so, so what I mean by that is, and the other side of it, I guess, and I'm fumbling over my words here so much that it's frustrating me. So sorry about that. But the other part of it is like, that means that even God's resistance to us in our disobedience can be a form of blessing. So God's posture is always to put us under that waterfall. He wants us to always experience his abundance, to live within his design, to live in alignment with him, because that is where life is truly found. And so when we go to step out of that, him pulling us back in is a blessing. It means we're still in relationship with him. It means we're still experiencing the potential for the best life possible. And so I see it throughout this entire story, even in Naomi and Elimelech's supposed disobedience. Like, they didn't do things the proper way. What you see is this drawing back and this restoration. It's Israel's story. They disobey God, they leave, they fall away, and God forgives them, draws them back. And so you get this perpetual story of God as one who pursues his disobedient children, loves them, makes a way for them to come back, puts the blessing on them again. You know what I mean? And so, like, I think if we think about blessing in this way, it really puts us in a place where we can stop doing I expect God to do this. Like with tithing, it can be really easy to go, I'm tithing now, I'm being obedient. Now my finances are going to be smooth, clean, and clear. And that's not the reality. Right. You still have to learn discipline and be in budget. So the blessing might be you feel the pinch because you've not learned that discipline yet. You know what I mean? So God may bless your finances, but it may look in the form of discipline. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and I say that because God's still disciplining me in that in some ways.
Well, and I think we equate blessing to happiness. And not always seeing the big picture of God's blessing is so many times not just for me, because he's working on whatever the situation is with you and with Chris. And so all that stuff, his big picture. And when we begin to have the Jesus mindset and the God mindset of this is what's important and God's kingdom is what important, then we realize, that blessing looks so different. It's not about our happiness. It's not about even us personally always.
Well, you said it earlier. You said the idea of dependence. Blessing is ultimately the thing that makes us realize how dependent we are on God. And so that can look like discipline. That can look like difficult times. That means we're going to still experience struggle and trial and hardship and our own stupidity of like not doing things right. And even when you were talking about that, and I love that in the Bible, how that's why we should read it. That's why we look at it and go back and go, these aren't perfect people, because we tend to just go, everything works out great with Jesus as people. Everything works out great when you're doing the right things. And so it's so important that we read the stories in there like this, you know, and even going back to the Rachel and Leah thing, like reading about all the infertility and all the struggle and all that stuff that you go, God had so many blessings coming for them through that struggle and through that, So just being able to recognize that in our life. That's even the story of Perez. Like, and we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about it a whole lot. The story of Perez is not a pretty story. Judah is an idiot in that story and doesn't do what he's supposed to do. He does a lot of things he's not supposed to do in that story. If you don't know it, he goes and visit what he thinks is a prostitute. It ends up being his daughter-in-law and she does that because he refuses to do what he should have done, and that's marry her to I think third or fourth son that they had, because her husband's Judah's sons kept dying off, and he doesn't do that. So he's unfaithful in that. He's unfaithful in going to a prostitute, and he, like, in all these different ways, Judah is a mess, and this story is a mess, and yet Perez is the result of it, and Perez will be a line of and a remembrance of God's promise to bless in spite of, and God's promise to pursue his plan and to bring about fulfillment and redemption in spite of our mess and our
that's so cool.
junk.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm so thankful for that. I mean, that's what we've been talking about in this whole story is this idea of like restoration and that even despite our messiness, even despite those moments when we are disobedient, when we walk away, I loved that picture of a waterfall. I think that is so beautiful, Chris. I absolutely love that. And I don't think I'm going to forget that for a long time to come that,
Good, I hope
you know,
not.
even if I step out in disobedience, God's blessings are still flowing. It's whether or not I'm going to choose to walk back into it and allow him to cover me.
Yeah.
So I just think I love that. I think that was absolutely so
Stacey,
beautiful.
you said it way better than I did. So
I'm just good at summarizing.
I like all of it. I like both of them.
Well, that's awesome. Do you guys have any other final thoughts before we close out today?
No, we're going to conclude. Phil, here's
Do I get to keep it?
Oh, that was great.
Take off my sandal and we'll conclude this.
I can't think of a better way to finish off today's podcast. Maybe we could finish off with some prayer. How does that sound? Will you pray for us, Chris?
God, I thank you so much for your love and your grace in our lives. God, this story is a story of your constant pursuit of us. God, of your unfailing devotion to love us, even though we are a mess as human beings. God, your constant pursuit and kindness towards us, your constant desire to pour blessing out in our lives. And God, I just pray that as we sit here and listen to who you are and what you're about in this story, and we hear this, God, my hope and my prayer is that we would be people who recognize that the things that you call us to, that the things that you ask of us, the call to be obedient is a call to place ourselves in a place where you can give us the good things that you desire for us. Mostly and first and foremost, your presence in our lives, your constant attention and your constant hand on our lives. And so, God, I pray that as we would hear these stories and hear and see the example of Ruth and Boaz, that we would see how you remain faithful and you remain true and good, and that we can experience the life that you have for us when we would align ourselves with you. So, God, please help us to take steps of obedience. Help us to follow the way that you call us to. And when it's scary, give us the courage and the ability to surrender to the thing that you do and that you're calling us to, so that we can experience your life, your presence, and your blessing. And Lord, we love you, we praise you, and give you thanks. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you both. I always love being on the podcast with both of you.
Absolutely.
And we thank all of you for taking the time to listen. Man, I hope you were encouraged today. I hope that your faith was strengthened. And make sure that if you enjoyed this, that you like, subscribe, share it with others, because we want for everyone to come to know Jesus and to understand his word deeper. Also, don't forget to check out those show notes with additional information in a way that you can engage with us in conversation. Thank you again for joining us. We hope you'll join us next time.